I sit in the conference room staring at the termination papers. My sister Emma just slid across the mahogany table. Behind Emma stands Marcus, my boss of 3 years, and beside him sits Jessica, my best friend since college. The words, immediate termination, blur as tears fill my eyes. None of them know that 2 months ago, through a shell company, I quietly purchased controlling shares in Meridian Marketing Solutions. They think they're firing a lowly graphic designer. Tomorrow morning, they'll discover they just terminated their actual owner. Let me take you back 6 months to when everything changed. Grandmother Rose passed away on a rainy Tuesday in March, and I thought I was attending just another painful funeral. Rose had always been the backbone of our family, the one person who saw through facades and called out nonsense when she encountered it. What I didn't expect was attorney Samuel Brooks approaching me 3 days after the service with news that would transform my entire world. "Robbie, your grandmother left you something significant," Samuel said, adjusting his wire-rimmed glasses as we sat in his downtown office. The afternoon sunlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating dust particles that danced in the air like tiny spirits. She was very specific about keeping this confidential until after the funeral arrangements were complete. My hands trembled as he handed me a sealed envelope with my name written in Rose's careful cursive. Inside, I found a handwritten letter that began with words I'll never forget. "My dearest Robbie, you are the only one who inherited my ability to see people's true hearts. Your sister Emma has always been beautiful and charming, but she lacks the moral compass that will guide you through life's difficult decisions." The letter continued for 3 pages, detailing Rose's observations about our family dynamics over the years. She had watched Emma manipulate situations to her advantage, witnessed her take credit for things she hadn't accomplished, and noticed how she used charm to mask her selfishness. But the real shock came in the final paragraph. Rose had left me exactly $2 million with strict instructions to use it wisely and keep the inheritance completely secret from Emma. "Your grandmother was very concerned about family dynamics," Samuel explained as I absorbed this life-changing information. "She established the inheritance through a series of investments and trusts that matured over the past 5 years. The money is clean, legal, and entirely yours to manage as you see fit." That evening, I walked through my small apartment in complete bewilderment. $2 million. The amount seemed surreal for someone earning $38,000 annually as a junior graphic designer. I had been struggling to pay student loans and afford basic necessities while watching Emma climb the corporate ladder at the same company where I worked. Over the following weeks, I researched investment opportunities and business acquisitions. That's when I discovered Meridian Marketing Solutions was struggling financially despite landing several lucrative municipal contracts. The owners, an elderly couple named Harold and Margaret Chen, wanted to retire but couldn't find qualified buyers willing to maintain their employees and company culture. Working with Samuel, I created Pinnacle Holdings, LLC, a shell company that would allow me to purchase controlling shares while maintaining complete anonymity. The acquisition process took 2 months of careful legal maneuvering, financial audits, and negotiations that kept my identity buried beneath layers of corporate structure. By June, I owned 65% of the company where my sister was rapidly ascending the management hierarchy. The irony tasted bitter even then, as I realized I now held the power to promote or terminate the very people who treated me as dispensable. Emma had just been named creative director, a position she secured through what everyone assumed was exceptional talent and innovative thinking. Marcus Rodriguez, my direct supervisor, had been particularly dismissive of my contributions over the past year. Despite my graphic design degree from State University and 3 years of solid performance reviews, he consistently assigned me mundane projects while giving high-visibility campaigns to newer employees he favored. His preference for Emma was obvious to everyone except human resources, who seemed blind to the blatant favoritism occurring throughout the company. Jessica Walsh, my supposed best friend since our freshman year at college, had become increasingly distant as Emma's star rose within the organization. What once felt like genuine friendship had morphed into something that resembled careful networking. She spent lunch breaks with Emma discussing weekend plans and career strategies while making polite excuses to avoid our traditional Thursday dinners. The most painful realization was that I had chosen to remain anonymous as a company owner specifically to preserve these relationships. I believed that money and power would complicate the genuine connections I thought I had with Emma, Marcus, and Jessica. How naive I was to think that genuine connections existed in the first place. Now, sitting in this conference room with termination papers in front of me, I understand that Rose was right about people's true hearts. Emma's perfectly styled blonde hair catches the afternoon light as she explains why my performance issues require immediate dismissal. Marcus nods supportively, his dark eyes avoiding mine, as he lists complaints that sound suspiciously rehearsed. Jessica shifts uncomfortably in her chair, her usual confident demeanor replaced by something that resembles guilt. This decision wasn't made lightly, Emma says, her voice carrying the authoritative tone she has perfected over the past year. But recent incidents have raised concerns about workplace harmony and professional standards. The irony burns through my chest like acid. Tomorrow morning, when I reveal my true identity as their employer, they will discover that they just fired the one person who had the power to protect their careers. The sweet taste of impending justice mingles with the bitter sting of betrayal as I sign the termination papers with a steady hand. The weekend after my termination, I sat in my apartment surrounded by boxes of personal items retrieved from my desk. Among them were sketchbooks, design samples, and project notes that sparked an uncomfortable recognition. As I flipped through pages of campaign concepts and advertising layouts, memories flooded back of Emma showing unusual interest in my creative process over the past 18 months. Using my ownership access to company security systems, I began reviewing archived footage from our shared workspace. What I discovered made my stomach turn with disgust and disbelief. The cameras captured Emma arriving early, multiple mornings, photographing my sketches with her phone before I arrived at the office. She studied my concept notes, copied layout designs onto her own notepad, and even took pictures of brainstorming sessions I had documented for my own reference. The most damaging evidence came from reviewing meeting recordings and email correspondence. Emma had been presenting my ideas as her own original concepts in morning strategy sessions with Marcus and senior management. The Riverside Bank campaign that won her a company-wide recognition award last month. That was my concept sketched out during lunch breaks and refined through late-night work sessions at home. The Mountain View restaurant chain, rebranding that secured her promotion to creative director, Wams had developed that entire visual identity system, including the logo variations and color palette specifications that Emma somehow presented as her innovative breakthrough. 23 different advertising campaigns over 18 months bore my creative DNA while carrying Emma's signature and receiving her accolades. Email records revealed the systematic nature of this theft. Emma had been coordinating with Jessica to gather intelligence about upcoming projects and client preferences. Jessica, who worked in account management, provided insider information about client meetings, budget constraints, and design preferences that gave Emma significant advantages in developing presentations. Make sure you mention the vintage aesthetic preference when you pitch the brewery account. Read one text from Jessica to Emma. The client specifically mentioned wanting something that feels authentically American, but not overtly patriotic. This was information I had shared with Jessica during a casual conversation about the challenges of balancing brand identity with cultural sensitivity. Marcus, whether consciously or unconsciously, had become Emma's unwitting accomplice by consistently scheduling important meetings during times when I was handling client revisions or attending required training sessions. This systematic exclusion meant I rarely had opportunities to present my own ideas directly to decision makers, while Emma enjoyed regular FaceTime with executives who could advance her career. The security footage also revealed something else that made my blood run cold. Emma had been accessing my computer workstation during lunch breaks and after-hours periods when she thought the office was empty, using a copied keycard that maintenance had provided for emergency access. She browsed through my digital files, copied design templates, and even reviewed my email correspondence with clients. Phone records from the past year showed Emma making frequent calls to Patricia Vaughn, a private investigator who specialized in corporate intelligence and background checks. The timing of these calls coincided perfectly with major project announcements and strategic planning meetings, suggesting that Emma was gathering information beyond what she could steal from my creative work. Text message logs between Emma and Marcus revealed flirtatious exchanges that explained his obvious favoritism toward her advancement. "You always know exactly what clients want," Marcus had written after Emma presented my stolen concert venue branding package. "Your instincts are incredible. Dinner Friday to celebrate." Emma's response was coy but encouraging. "I'd love to discuss future projects over wine." The most heartbreaking discovery was a recorded conversation between Emma and Jessica from 3 weeks ago. "Robbie is getting suspicious about the creative overlap," Emma said, her voice lacking any trace of guilt or concern. She made some comment about her ideas showing up in presentations she wasn't part of. Jessica's response chilled me to the bone. "Maybe it's time to create some distance. I can mention to Marcus that she's been acting possessive about team projects. Make it seem like she's not collaborative enough for the creative director track." Perfect," Emma replied. "If we position it as a team chemistry issue, Marcus will probably reassign her to individual projects only. That would effectively sideline her career progression while keeping her isolated from strategic planning." They had been systematically destroying my professional reputation while building Emma's career on the foundation of my stolen work. Every award Emma received, every recognition she earned, every promotion she secured was built on creativity she had stolen from her own sister. The betrayal cut deeper than any professional disappointment could because it revealed the calculated cruelty of someone I had loved and trusted unconditionally. The evidence painted a picture of premeditated theft that extended far beyond casual inspiration or unconscious influence. Emma had been running a sophisticated operation designed to transfer my creative output directly into her professional portfolio while ensuring I received no credit or recognition for my contributions. As I compiled screenshots, email printouts, and security footage timestamps, the scope of the deception became overwhelming. This wasn't opportunistic theft or competitive rivalry between siblings. This was a methodical campaign designed to steal my professional identity while systematically sabotaging my career prospects. The worst part was realizing how long this had been happening. Looking back through archived files and project timelines, I could trace the pattern of theft to Emma's first month in the creative department. She had been stealing my work from the very beginning of her time at Meridian Marketing, using my creativity as a foundation for her entire professional reputation. Tomorrow, I would begin documenting everything for legal purposes. But tonight, I sat surrounded by evidence of the most personal betrayal imaginable, understanding that my sister had spent 18 months systematically destroying my career to build her own. The termination papers were just the final step in a plan that had been orchestrating my professional destruction from the moment Emma realized she could profit from my talent. Monday morning brought a discovery that shifted my understanding of recent events from professional betrayal to calculated family manipulation. While organizing financial documents for my legal team, I noticed several missed calls from our cousin Derek in Portland. When I returned his call, his nervous tone immediately raised red flags. Or, Robbie, I need to tell you something that's been eating at me for weeks. Derek began, his voice heavy with guilt. Emma contacted me about a month ago, asking questions about Grandmother Rose's will and estate planning. She seemed really concerned about family finances and inheritance distribution. My heart rate accelerated as Derek continued his confession. She told me you had been acting strange since the funeral, and she was worried you might have gambling problems or drug issues that could affect family assets. She asked if I knew anything about Rose's financial arrangements or if there had been any surprises in the will reading. The manipulation was more sophisticated than I had imagined. Emma had been conducting reconnaissance among our extended family, gathering intelligence about Rose's estate, while positioning herself as the concerned sister worried about my mental stability and financial responsibility. "Did you tell her anything specific?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady despite the growing rage building in my chest. "I didn't know much to tell," Derek admitted. "But I did mention that Rose had always been secretive about her investments and that she had made some comments over the years about wanting to reward the grandchild who showed the most integrity and wisdom." That conversation had apparently triggered Emma's investigation into Rose's financial legacy. Phone records showed Emma hiring Patricia Vaughn, the private investigator, just 3 days after her conversation with Derek. The investigation had focused specifically on bank records, estate filings, and any unusual financial transactions connected to Rose's death. What Emma discovered through her investigation was the existence of a $2 million inheritance. But Patricia's research had only uncovered the surface layer of the financial arrangements. The investigator found records of large cash transfers and investment liquidations, but missed the crucial detail of the Meridian Marketing acquisition. Emma believed she was dealing with a straightforward inheritance dispute over liquid assets, not a complex corporate ownership structure. Text message logs between Emma and Patricia revealed the depth of Emma's paranoia and entitlement. "I need to know if Robbie is hiding assets that should be split between both sisters," Emma had written. "My grandmother always talked about family loyalty and equal treatment, so there's no way she would have left everything to one person without good reason." Patricia's response was professionally neutral but encouraging. Estate investigations often reveal discrepancies between public filings and actual asset distribution. If you suspect inheritance, fraud, or manipulation of an elderly person's decisions, there are legal remedies available to challenge the distribution. That exchange explained everything. Emma believed I had somehow manipulated Rose or forged documents to steal family money that rightfully belonged to both sisters. Her investigation had convinced her that I was sitting on inherited wealth while continuing to work a low-paying job as an elaborate cover story. The firing strategy became clear when I reviewed email drafts Emma had saved but never sent. One unsent message to Derek read, "Robbie's behavior at work has become increasingly erratic and concerning. She's been making paranoid comments about coworkers stealing her ideas and seems to think everyone is plotting against her. I'm worried the stress of hiding financial secrets is affecting her mental health." Another draft message, this one addressed to our parents, was even more damaging. "I think Robbie may have taken advantage of Grandmother Rose in her final months to secure financial benefits she wasn't meant to have. Her sudden change in behavior and secretive attitude about money suggests she's hiding something significant from the family." Emma had been constructing a narrative that would justify both the termination and a future legal challenge to the inheritance. By positioning me as mentally unstable and potentially dangerous in the workplace, she could claim that my erratic behavior proved I was unfit to manage significant financial resources. The firing would serve as evidence of my deteriorating mental state in any legal proceeding. Jessica's role became clearer through recovered chat logs from a private messaging app. "Marcus is completely on board with the performance improvement plan," Jessica had written to Emma 2 weeks before my termination. He thinks Robbie has been showing signs of workplace stress and agrees that immediate action might be necessary for everyone's safety. Emma's response revealed the calculated nature of the campaign. Perfect. If we can document a pattern of instability and poor decision-making, it will support our position that she shouldn't be managing any significant financial responsibilities. The inheritance dispute will be much stronger if we can show she's not mentally competent. The most chilling evidence came from a recorded phone conversation between Emma and Marcus that Patricia had captured during her surveillance work. "I'm really concerned about my sister's mental health." Emma said, her voice perfectly calibrated to sound worried rather than manipulative. "She's been making paranoid statements about coworkers and seems to think there's some conspiracy against her at work." Marcus responded with genuine concern. "I've noticed some changes in her behavior over the past few weeks. Nothing dramatic, but she seems more withdrawn and suspicious than usual. Do you think she might be having personal financial problems that are affecting her work performance?" "That's exactly what I'm worried about," Emma replied. "I think she might be under serious financial pressure and it's making her desperate and unpredictable. Maybe we should consider whether she's still a good fit for the team environment." The conversation continued for another 20 minutes, with Emma carefully planting suggestions about my alleged instability while positioning herself as a caring sister who wanted what was best for everyone involved. By the end of the call, Marcus was convinced that terminating my employment was both necessary for workplace safety and compassionate for my own mental health. The systematic nature of the setup was breathtaking in its calculated cruelty. Emma had spent weeks preparing the groundwork for my termination while simultaneously building a case for challenging the inheritance. Every conversation, every planted rumor, every seemingly concerned comment had been designed to create a comprehensive narrative of my unfitness to handle professional responsibilities or manage financial assets. As I reviewed the final pieces of evidence, the scope of Emma's manipulation became clear. She hadn't just stolen my creative work or orchestrated my firing. She had been conducting a sophisticated campaign to destroy my credibility, isolate me from professional opportunities, and position herself to claim assets she believed I had stolen from our family. The irony was devastating. While Emma was plotting to take money she thought I had inherited, she was actually destroying her own career at the company I secretly owned. Her elaborate scheme to prove my instability was about to backfire in ways she could never have imagined. Tuesday evening brought a discovery that transformed my understanding of the corruption at Meridian Marketing from personal betrayal to systematic corporate fraud. As the anonymous owner, I had access to all financial records and banking systems which I had been too distracted to thoroughly review during the emotional turmoil of recent events. What I found in the accounting software made my previous discoveries seem almost trivial by comparison. Marcus had been running an elaborate embezzlement scheme that leveraged his position as operations manager to create fictitious vendors and approve fraudulent payments. The sophistication of his operation was impressive in its criminal creativity and terrifying in its potential impact on company finances. The fake companies had perfectly plausible names: Atlantic Design Services, supposedly a freelance graphic design collective; Pinnacle Print Solutions, allegedly a specialty printing house for large format materials; Summit Marketing Research, supposedly providing consumer behavior analysis; and Cascade Office Supplies, claiming to offer bulk purchasing discounts for small businesses. Each fictitious vendor had professional-looking invoices, realistic service descriptions, and payment schedules that appeared legitimate to anyone not conducting detailed verification. Marcus had been approving payments ranging from $800 to $3,000 per transaction, carefully keeping individual amounts below the $4,000 threshold that required additional executive approval. Over 8 months, Marcus had diverted exactly $43,627 through this network of fake companies. The stolen money was deposited into business accounts he had opened using false registration documents and fictional business licenses. From those accounts, he transferred funds to personal checking accounts and used them to pay gambling debts at 3 different casinos in the region. Security footage from Belmont Racetrack showed Marcus placing substantial bets during work hours on at least 14 occasions over the past 6 months. Additional surveillance from Mohegan Sun Casino captured him losing significant amounts at poker tables and slot machines during supposed business meetings and client consultations. The timestamps on casino footage directly contradicted his submitted expense reports and calendar appointments. Credit card statements revealed the depth of Marcus's gambling addiction. He owed $17,000 to MasterCard, $12,000 to Visa, and had taken cash advances totaling $9,000 from American Express. His mortgage payments were 3 months behind, and his car had been repossessed 6 weeks ago, though he had been borrowing vehicles from friends to maintain the appearance of financial stability. The most disturbing aspect of Marcus's embezzlement was how Emma's promotion had inadvertently enabled his criminal activity. As creative director, Emma now had authority to approve vendor relationships and authorize payments for creative services. Her lack of attention to financial details, combined with her focus on advancing her own career through stolen ideas, created the perfect environment for Marcus to expand his fraudulent operations. Email records showed Emma rubber-stamping vendor approvals without conducting proper due diligence or verifying service delivery. Approved for payment, she would write in response to Marcus's requests, often within minutes of receiving invoices for services that were never actually provided. Her eagerness to appear decisive and efficient as a new manager made her the perfect unwitting accomplice to systematic theft. Jessica's role in enabling the embezzlement became apparent through her position in account management. She had access to client billing information and project budgets, which she shared freely with both Emma and Marcus during their regular lunch meetings and after-work social gatherings. This intelligence allowed Marcus to time his fraudulent invoices with periods when legitimate expenses were high, making the fake charges blend seamlessly into normal operational costs. The Henderson campaign budget has room for additional design services, Jessica had texted to Marcus 3 weeks ago. They approved an extra $5,000 for creative development, so this would be a good time to process any pending vendor invoices. Marcus responded within hours by submitting a $3,000 invoice from Atlantic Design Services for conceptual design consultation and mood board development that was never provided. Emma approved the payment the same day, and the money disappeared into Marcus's personal account by the following Friday. The cascade of financial misconduct extended beyond simple theft. Marcus had been manipulating project timelines and budget allocations to create opportunities for his fraudulent billing. When real vendors submitted legitimate invoices, he would delay payment approvals to create artificial cash flow problems, then use the urgency to justify expedited payments to his fake companies. Bank reconciliation documents revealed that Marcus had been falsifying financial reports to hide the missing money. He altered vendor payment summaries, created fictional budget categories, and even modified bank statements to show transfers that never occurred. The accounting irregularities should have been caught during monthly reviews, but Marcus had convinced Harold and Margaret Chen, the previous owners, that his streamlined processes were improving operational efficiency. The most damaging evidence came from recorded phone conversations between Marcus and various casino credit departments. "I can guarantee payment by next Friday," Marcus told a collections agent from Atlantic City Casino 2 months ago. "I have access to business accounts that will cover the outstanding balance plus interest penalties." Another recorded conversation captured Marcus negotiating payment terms with a loan shark who specialized in gambling debt collection. "The interest rate is steep, but I can handle it," Marcus said, his voice stressed and desperate. My position at work gives me flexibility with vendor payments, so cash flow won't be a problem long term. The gambling addiction explained Marcus's increasingly erratic behavior over the past year. Several employees had commented on his mood swings, his tendency to make impulsive decisions about project priorities, and his growing isolation from normal social interactions. What appeared to be standard workplace stress was actually the psychological pressure of maintaining criminal activity while struggling with compulsive gambling behaviors. Security logs showed Marcus accessing the building during off hours to modify financial records and submit fraudulent invoices without oversight. He had been using his administrative access to the accounting software to cover his tracks, but the digital trail was still recoverable through system backups and transaction histories that he didn't realize were automatically archived. The scope of the financial crime was staggering when combined with Emma's intellectual property theft and the systematic campaign to destroy my credibility. Meridian Marketing was being hollowed out from within by a conspiracy of greed addiction and sibling rivalry that threatened to destroy everything Harold and Margaret Chen had built over 20 years of honest business practices. As I compiled evidence files for law enforcement, the interconnected nature of the criminal activity became clear. Emma's stolen creative work provided the successful campaigns that generated revenue for Marcus to steal. Jessica's insider information enabled both the intellectual property theft and the financial fraud. My termination was designed to eliminate the one person who might notice the discrepancies and connect the various schemes. The irony was devastating. While they were systematically looting the company, I secretly owned Emma Marcus, and Jessica believed they were building successful careers and securing their financial futures. Tomorrow morning, when I revealed the truth about my ownership and presented evidence of their criminal activity, their carefully constructed conspiracy would collapse under the weight of federal fraud charges and civil liability that would follow them for decades. The evidence was overwhelming, the financial damage was substantial, and the betrayal was complete. But for the first time since receiving my termination papers, I felt the stirring of satisfaction that comes with knowing justice was finally within reach. Wednesday morning brought an unexpected knock on my apartment door that would change everything about my approach to seeking justice. Dylan Chen stood in the hallway, holding a manila folder thick with documents, his usually quiet demeanor replaced by something that resembled determined resolve. "We need to talk," Dylan said, glancing nervously down the corridor. "May I come in? What I have to show you is sensitive, and we shouldn't discuss it in public spaces." Dylan had always been the invisible employee at Meridian Marketing, the soft-spoken data analyst who arrived early, worked efficiently, and left without engaging in office politics or social drama. Most people barely noticed him, which I now realized had been a strategic advantage that allowed him to observe patterns others missed. "I know what happened to you wasn't fair," Dylan began as we sat in my living room. "But what you don't know is that I've been documenting systematic irregularities at the company for the past 6 months. Your termination was just the final piece of evidence I needed to understand the full scope of the corruption." He opened the folder to reveal meticulously organized spreadsheets, timeline charts, and documentation that rivaled anything a forensic accountant might produce. Every suspicious transaction, every unusual vendor approval, every questionable personnel decision had been carefully tracked and cross-referenced with supporting evidence. "I noticed the creative overlap between your preliminary sketches and Emma's final presentations back in January," Dylan explained, pointing to a chart that tracked project timelines and design similarities. "At first, I thought it might be coincidence or standard collaborative development, but the pattern was too consistent and the timing too convenient." Dylan's analysis revealed details I had missed, even with access to company security systems. He had been photographing Emma's design presentations with a discreet phone camera, then comparing them to sketches he observed on my desk during his routine data collection visits to various departments. The documentation showed 18 distinct instances where Emma's award-winning campaigns were virtually identical to concepts I had developed weeks earlier. The financial irregularities were easier to spot once I started looking. Dylan continued flipping to a section of spreadsheets that tracked vendor payments and budget allocations. Marcus was clever about keeping individual transactions below audit thresholds, but the cumulative pattern was obvious to anyone analyzing monthly expenditures systematically. What Dylan revealed next stunned me into silence. His background wasn't actually data analysis for marketing companies. He was a former FBI forensic accountant who had taken this position to maintain a low profile after testifying in a major white-collar prosecution case that resulted in death threats from organized crime figures. I worked financial crimes for 8 years before the Antonelli case made my continued employment with the Bureau problematic, Dylan explained matter-of-factly. Testifying against a crime family that laundered money through legitimate businesses tends to create ongoing security concerns that make normal law enforcement careers complicated. The Antonelli prosecution had been front-page news 18 months ago. Dylan's testimony about sophisticated money laundering operations had sent 12 people to federal prison, including 3 made members of a crime organization that controlled construction and waste management contracts throughout New England. His expertise in tracking complex financial schemes through multiple shell companies and fraudulent vendor relationships was exactly what the prosecution needed to secure convictions. I took the position at Meridian to lay low and rebuild my life away from high-profile cases, Dylan continued. But old habits are hard to break. When I noticed the accounting irregularities and creative theft, my investigative instincts kicked in automatically. Dylan's documentation included details about Emma's private investigator that I hadn't discovered through my own research. Patricia Vaughn wasn't just conducting inheritance research for Emma, she was also gathering intelligence about my personal finances, social relationships, and psychological profile to support a broader campaign of character assassination. Patricia has been conducting surveillance on your daily routine for 3 weeks. Dylan explained, showing me photographs taken with telephoto lenses that captured me grocery shopping, visiting the library, and meeting with attorney Samuel Brooks. Emma hired her to document behavior patterns that could be interpreted as unstable or suspicious in legal proceedings. The scope of the surveillance was more extensive than I had realized. Patricia had been tracking my bank transactions, monitoring my social media activity, and even interviewing neighbors about my lifestyle and emotional state. The goal was to compile evidence that would support claims of mental instability and financial irresponsibility in any legal challenge to Rose's inheritance. Gogam, Emma doesn't realize that conducting this level of surveillance without legitimate legal justification constitutes criminal stalking under federal privacy laws. Dylan observed with the casual authority of someone who had prosecuted similar cases. Patricia's investigation has crossed several legal boundaries that could result in felony charges for both the investigator and the client who hired her services. Dylan's analysis also revealed coordination between Emma, Marcus, and Jessica that extended beyond the workplace conspiracy I had uncovered. The 3 had been meeting regularly at Jessica's apartment to plan strategy, divide responsibilities, and coordinate their various schemes to maximize personal benefit while minimizing detection risks. Thus, Jessica has been the intelligence coordinator for the entire operation. Dylan explained, showing me cell phone records and social media communications he had legally obtained through his professional contacts. She gathered information from multiple sources, then distributed it to Emma and Marcus based on their specific needs and opportunities. The evidence showed Jessica manipulating client relationships to create opportunities for Emma to present stolen designs and Marcus to submit fraudulent invoices. She had been steering high-value projects toward time periods when I was unavailable to participate in presentations while simultaneously providing Marcus with budget information that allowed him to maximize theft without triggering automatic audit procedures. What they don't realize is that their conspiracy includes multiple federal crimes. Dylan continued, his voice taking on the authoritative tone of someone accustomed to explaining complex legal concepts to juries. Wire fraud, mail fraud, computer fraud, identity theft, money laundering, and conspiracy charges could result in decades of federal prison time for each participant. Dylan's offer to help was both professionally motivated and personally satisfying. His experience prosecuting white-collar crime gave him unique insight into building cases that would withstand legal challenges, while his desire for a quiet life made him invested in eliminating corruption from his current workplace. I can help you document everything properly for law enforcement while ensuring your safety throughout the investigation, Dylan offered. I still have contacts at the FBI who specialize in corporate fraud cases, and I understand exactly what evidence prosecutors need to secure convictions. The partnership Dylan proposed would combine my access to company records as the anonymous owner with his expertise in financial forensics and criminal prosecution. Together, we could build a case that would not only expose the conspiracy, but ensure that Emma, Marcus, and Jessica faced appropriate legal consequences for their systematic betrayal. There's something else you should know, Dylan said as our conversation concluded. Emma has accelerated her timeline for challenging the inheritance. She's planning to file legal papers next Monday, claiming that you manipulated Rose through elder abuse and financial coercion. The termination was designed to provide supporting evidence of your alleged instability. The revelation that I had less than a week to act transformed our discussion from theoretical justice to urgent action planning. Dylan's expertise would be crucial in building a case that not only protected me from Emma's false accusations, but turned the tables on the conspiracy that had been systematically destroying my career and reputation. As Dylan gathered his documents to leave, I felt something I hadn't experienced since receiving my termination papers' hope. For the first time, I had an ally whose expertise matched the sophistication of the conspiracy against me. Tomorrow, we would begin building the case that would bring justice to Meridian Marketing and expose the true nature of the people I had once trusted with my love, my loyalty, and my professional future. Thursday morning brought devastating news that transformed our investigation from a methodical evidence-gathering operation into an urgent defensive strategy. Dylan called at 7:30 a.m. with information that made my blood run cold and my hands shake as I gripped the phone. Hey, Emma has filed a police report alleging inheritance, fraud, and elder abuse. Dylan said, his voice tight with controlled anger. Detective Maria Santos is already investigating based on fabricated bank statements and forged medical records that make it appear you coerced Rose into changing her will during her final weeks. The sophistication of Emma's legal attack was breathtaking in its calculated malice. Working with Patricia Vaughn, she had created an elaborate documentary foundation that portrayed me as a manipulative predator who had taken advantage of our grandmother's declining mental capacity to steal family assets that rightfully belonged to both sisters. The evidence she submitted includes altered bank statements showing suspicious transfers from Rose's account to yours fake medical records suggesting Rose was suffering from early-stage dementia, and witness statements from people claiming they observed you pressuring Rose about financial matters. Dylan explained as he reviewed copies of the police report he had obtained through his law enforcement contacts. Emma had been more thorough than either of us anticipated. The fabricated medical records bore forged signatures from Dr. Helen Morrison Rose's longtime physician and included detailed notes about cognitive decline that supposedly made Rose vulnerable to financial manipulation. The documents looked authentic enough to fool casual inspection, though forensic analysis would eventually reveal the deception. The witness statements were even more damaging because they came from people who had actually interacted with Rose during her final months. Emma had contacted Rose's neighbors, church acquaintances, and former coworkers to plant suggestions about suspicious behavior, then followed up weeks later to ask if they had noticed anything concerning about my visits with Rose. I spoke with Margaret Thompson, Rose's next-door neighbor, for 15 years, Dylan reported after conducting his own interviews to verify Emma's claims. She told me that Emma called 6 weeks ago asking if she had noticed any changes in Rose's routine or any unusual visitors during her final months. Margaret's recollection revealed Emma's manipulation tactics. Emma seemed so concerned about her grandmother's welfare, Margaret had told Dylan. She asked specific questions about whether Rose seemed confused or worried about family matters, and whether Robbie had been visiting more frequently than usual before Rose passed away. After planting these suggestions, Emma had waited 3 weeks before calling Margaret again, this time asking if she would be willing to provide a statement about her concerns regarding Rose's mental state and my frequent visits. Margaret, who had no reason to suspect manipulation, provided a statement describing how Rose had seemed worried about family financial matters during conversations in her garden. Emma used similar techniques with Rose's church friends and former colleagues at the library. Dylan continued. She would plant suggestions about concerning behavior during initial conversations, then return later to collect statements that supported the narrative she was building for legal proceedings. The forged bank statements were particularly sophisticated because they incorporated real transaction details altered to suggest suspicious patterns. Emma had obtained legitimate bank records through her private investigator, then used computer software to modify dates, amounts, and transfer descriptions to create the appearance of financial coercion. The falsified records show large transfers from Rose's savings account to yours during her final 6 weeks, with memo lines suggesting the payments were for household assistance and personal care services, Dylan explained. Without access to the original bank records, the pattern looks like classic financial elder abuse. What made Emma's strategy especially dangerous was how closely it resembled actual inheritance, fraud cases that prosecutors had successfully pursued in the past. The combination of alleged cognitive decline, suspicious financial transfers, and witness statements about changed behavior created a compelling narrative that could convince law enforcement to pursue criminal charges. Detective Santos is experienced with elder abuse cases, and she's seen similar patterns many times before, Dylan warned. Emma's fabricated evidence follows textbook examples of inheritance fraud that Santos has successfully prosecuted in the past. Jessica's role in the legal attack became clear through social media posts and text message logs that Dylan recovered through his investigative contacts. She had been systematically spreading rumors about my mental state and suspicious behavior through carefully orchestrated conversations with mutual friends and former colleagues. Jessica has been telling people that you've been acting paranoid and secretive since Rose's death, Dylan explained, showing me screenshots of Facebook messages and Twitter posts that painted me as unstable and potentially dangerous. She positions these revelations as concerned observations from a longtime friend who's worried about your psychological well-being. The social media campaign was designed to create a digital trail of evidence suggesting that my behavior had become increasingly erratic since inheriting Rose's money. Jessica's posts included subtle references to canceled plans, strange conversations, and concerning comments that could be interpreted as signs of guilt or mental instability. The most damaging post was from 2 weeks ago. Dylan noted, pointing to a Facebook status that read, "Sometimes the people closest to us change in ways we never expected, praying for friends who are struggling with difficult family situations and hoping they find the help they need." Several mutual friends had responded to that post with supportive comments and questions about who Jessica was concerned about. Her carefully worded responses never mentioned my name directly, but provided enough context clues that anyone following the conversation would understand she was referring to me. Marcus had contributed to the character assassination campaign by filing a formal complaint with Human Resources about my alleged workplace behavior issues. The complaint, submitted 3 days before my termination, documented supposed incidents of paranoid statements, aggressive responses to feedback, and concerning comments about coworkers that suggested psychological instability. Marcus's HR complaint provides official documentation that Emma can reference in legal proceedings. Dylan explained, it creates the appearance of independent verification for her claims about your mental state, even though the incidents he described were either fabricated or grossly misrepresented. The timeline of these coordinated attacks revealed the sophistication of Emma's planning. She had begun laying groundwork for the inheritance challenge 6 weeks before my termination, methodically building a case that would portray me as mentally unstable and legally unfit to manage significant financial assets. Emma's strategy is designed to overwhelm you with multiple legal and social challenges simultaneously. Dylan observed with the analytical clarity of someone who had seen similar tactics used by organized crime defendants. If she can establish that you're mentally unstable through the workplace termination and social media evidence, it strengthens her claim that you manipulated Rose through elder abuse. The revelation that Detective Santos was already investigating based on Emma's fabricated evidence meant that we had days, rather than weeks, to present our side of the story. Criminal charges for inheritance fraud could be filed at any time, potentially leading to my arrest and creating a public scandal that would destroy my reputation, regardless of the eventual legal outcome. We need to accelerate our timeline and present evidence of the conspiracy to law enforcement before Emma's false narrative becomes the official record. Dylan said, his voice carrying the urgency of someone who understood how quickly legal situations could spiral beyond control. The counterattack would require perfect timing and overwhelming evidence that not only disproved Emma's allegations, but demonstrated the systematic nature of her conspiracy with Marcus and Jessica. We had 48 hours to transform our methodical investigation into a comprehensive case that would protect me from criminal prosecution while exposing the true scope of corruption at Meridian Marketing. The battle for justice had begun, and Emma's opening move was more sophisticated and dangerous than I had ever imagined possible. Friday afternoon brought news that shattered my understanding of how far Emma's manipulation had penetrated into our family structure. Dylan's call came as I was preparing evidence files for our meeting with law enforcement, and his voice carried a gravity that made me stop everything to focus completely on his words. "Oh, Emma has convinced your parents to sign legal documents, giving her power of attorney over family financial matters." Dylan reported the strain evident in his usually calm tone. She used forged psychological evaluations and fabricated medical reports to convince them that you're suffering from bipolar disorder with violent tendencies. The attack on my family relationships was the cruelest aspect of Emma's campaign because it exploited our parents' genuine love and concern for both daughters. Frank and Carol had always tried to remain neutral in sibling conflicts, but Emma had weaponized their parental instincts to protect family unity and individual well-being. She arranged for them to meet with attorney Richard Holbrook, who specializes in guardianship cases and mental health legal issues. Dylan continued consulting notes he had taken during phone interviews with contacts in the legal community. The documents they signed transfer oversight of family property bank accounts and even access to your childhood home to Emma's discretionary control. The fabricated psychological evaluation bore the forged signature of Dr. Patricia Wells, a licensed clinical psychologist who had never met me, but whose credentials and office letterhead had been appropriated for Emma's deception. The fake assessment described a detailed history of mental instability, including alleged incidents of aggressive behavior, paranoid delusions, and financial irresponsibility that made me a danger to myself and others. The forged evaluation includes specific incidents that Emma claims to have witnessed over the past 6 months. Dylan explained reading from copies of the documents he had obtained through investigative channels. She describes episodes where you allegedly threatened family members, made paranoid accusations about co-workers, and exhibited signs of mania that suggested possible substance abuse issues. Emma had been careful to include details that sounded plausible to parents who loved me, but weren't present for day-to-day interactions that would contradict her claims. She described alleged late-night phone calls where I made incoherent accusations about workplace conspiracies, visits to the family home where I seemed agitated and suspicious, and conversations where I expressed grandiose plans that suggested possible delusions of grandeur. Your parents were genuinely frightened by the documentation Emma presented. Dylan continued, his voice reflecting sympathy for the impossible position Emma had created for Frank and Carol. From their perspective, signing the power of attorney documents was a way to protect both daughters while ensuring that any mental health crisis could be managed through appropriate legal and medical channels. The manipulation of our parents was particularly cruel because it exploited their lack of understanding about mental health issues and legal procedures. Emma had presented herself as the responsible sister, seeking professional guidance to protect family assets and ensure appropriate care for a sibling who needed intervention but couldn't recognize her own condition. Richard Holbrook, the attorney who facilitated the power of attorney arrangements, was known in legal circles for his aggressive approach to guardianship cases and his willingness to pursue legal remedies even when family situations were complicated or contentious. His involvement suggested that Emma was preparing to escalate beyond simple inheritance disputes to complete legal control over my financial and personal decisions. Holbrook specializes in cases where families need court intervention to protect vulnerable adults from their own poor judgment, Dylan explained. He successfully obtained guardianships in situations involving gambling addiction, substance abuse, and mental health crises that rendered people incapable of managing their own affairs. The documents Frank and Carol signed included provisions that would allow Emma to access my bank accounts, make medical decisions on my behalf, and even commit me to psychiatric treatment facilities if she deemed it necessary for my safety or the protection of others. The scope of control was comprehensive and potentially devastating to my ability to defend myself against the various legal attacks Emma was orchestrating. Emma has effectively created a legal framework that positions her as your caretaker and guardian. Dylan observed with the analytical precision of someone who understood the long-term implications of such arrangements. If she can convince a judge that you're mentally incompetent, she gains control over the inheritance money while simultaneously protecting herself from any legal consequences related to the workplace conspiracy. The timeline of the power of attorney signing coincided perfectly with Emma's acceleration of the inheritance, fraud allegations, and my workplace termination. She had been building a comprehensive legal strategy that would eliminate me as a threat, while positioning herself to claim all disputed assets through guardianship proceedings, rather than direct inheritance challenges. Your parents have no idea they've been manipulated into enabling what amounts to financial and personal identity theft. Dylan continued, his voice reflecting both professional admiration for Emma's tactical sophistication and personal disgust at her willingness to destroy family relationships for financial gain. Text message logs between Emma and our cousin Derek revealed how she had been preparing family members for news about my supposed mental health crisis. I'm really worried about Robbie's emotional stability since grandmother Rose died, she had written to Derek 3 weeks ago. She's been making strange accusations about work and seems paranoid about money issues. Emma had followed up with phone calls to various aunts, uncles, and family friends, describing alleged incidents where my behavior seemed concerning and asking for advice about how to help someone who might not recognize their need for professional intervention. These conversations created a network of family members who were primed to support Emma's narrative about my mental health decline. The family preparation campaign was designed to ensure that when Emma revealed the extent of your supposed problems, everyone would respond with support for her difficult position rather than skepticism about her claims. Dylan analyzed with the insight of someone who had seen similar manipulation tactic used in criminal enterprises. The power of attorney documents also included provisions that would prevent me from accessing family property or financial accounts, even if I wasn't formally declared incompetent. Emma could freeze assets, restrict access to shared resources, and even change locks on family property based solely on her assessment of whether my presence posed a risk to family safety or financial security. Frank and Carol signed these documents, believing they were protecting you from the consequences of untreated mental illness. Dylan explained with evident sympathy for our parents' impossible situation. They have no idea that they've given Emma legal tools that could be used to destroy your life, while enriching her through systematic theft and manipulation. The cruelest aspect of the family manipulation was that it exploited genuine love and concern to achieve malicious goals. Our parents' signatures on those documents represented their willingness to make difficult decisions to protect family welfare. But Emma had twisted their good intentions into weapons that could be used to eliminate me as an obstacle to her criminal enterprises. As I absorbed the full scope of Emma's attack on our family structure, the personal pain overshadowed even the professional and legal threats I was facing. She hadn't just stolen my work and orchestrated my firing. She had systematically destroyed my relationships with the people who love me most, using their own caring nature as the mechanism for my isolation and potential destruction. The battle for justice had become a battle for my identity, my freedom, and my place in the family that had shaped everything important about who I was as a person. Tomorrow's meeting with law enforcement would determine whether truth could overcome the elaborate fiction Emma had constructed around my life and relationships. Saturday morning brought a revelation that elevated our evidence from workplace fraud to corporate espionage with potential national security implications. Dylan arrived at my apartment with fresh intelligence that would transform Monday's law enforcement meeting into an urgent federal investigation requiring immediate intervention. Emma isn't just planning to steal your inheritance or destroy your reputation. Dylan began spreading new documents across my kitchen table with the methodical precision of someone unveiling a complex criminal conspiracy. She's been secretly negotiating to sell the entire company to Apex Marketing Group, a firm with documented connections to foreign intelligence operations. The scope of Emma's betrayal expanded beyond anything I had imagined possible. Working through intermediaries and shell companies, she had been conducting unauthorized negotiations to transfer ownership of Meridian Marketing along with all client data, proprietary software systems, and strategic intelligence to an organization that specialized in acquiring American advertising agencies for purposes that extended far beyond legitimate business competition. Apex Marketing Group is owned by Sino-Pacific Investment Holdings, which is controlled by Chinese nationals with ties to intelligence services. Dylan explained consulting classified briefing materials he had obtained through his former FBI contacts. They've been systematically acquiring American marketing firms that handle government contracts and municipal advertising accounts. The acquisition target list included companies that managed public information campaigns for state transportation departments, municipal utilities, and federal agencies responsible for infrastructure security. Meridian Marketing's contracts with the City Planning Department, Metro Transportation Authority, and Regional Emergency Management Office contained sensitive information about public safety systems, infrastructure vulnerabilities, and emergency response protocols. Emma believes she can manipulate Marcus and the ownership transition documents to authorize the sale before anyone realizes what's happening. Dylan continued pointing to email communications he had intercepted through legal surveillance methods. She's convinced Apex that she controls operational decisions and can deliver client contracts worth over $1.2 million annually. The financial terms Emma had negotiated included a base payment of $800,000 for company assets plus a consulting fee of $250,000 for her role in facilitating the transition and maintaining client relationships. She had also secured a position as regional director for Apex's East Coast operations, with an annual salary that would exceed her current income by more than 300%. The sale is scheduled for next Friday. Dylan announced, his voice carrying the urgency of someone who understood the national security implications of the transaction. Emma has convinced Apex representatives that she can deliver signed transfer documents and client contract assignments before regulatory agencies realize that foreign nationals are acquiring access to sensitive municipal infrastructure data. Marcus's role in enabling the unauthorized sale had evolved beyond simple embezzlement to active participation in what could constitute economic espionage. His access to financial systems and vendor relationships had provided Emma with detailed information about company assets, client contract values, and operational capabilities that she needed to negotiate realistic terms with potential buyers. Marcus has been providing Emma with confidential information about our government contracts and security clearances. Dylan explained, showing me copies of emails where Marcus detailed which employees had access to classified municipal planning documents and emergency response protocols. He doesn't realize that he's potentially guilty of espionage charges that carry decades in federal prison. Jessica's involvement in the corporate sale had expanded her role from workplace manipulation to active intelligence gathering on behalf of foreign interests. Her position in account management gave her access to client communications, budget information, and strategic planning documents that would be valuable to organizations seeking to understand American infrastructure security measures. Jessica has been copying client files and project specifications to provide Apex with detailed intelligence about municipal operations and security protocols. Dylan continued displaying evidence of systematic data theft that went far beyond the workplace conspiracy we had originally uncovered. She's been photographing confidential documents and transmitting them to Emma for inclusion in the sale negotiations. The unauthorized access to sensitive government information had been happening for 3 months, coinciding with Emma's initial contact with Apex Marketing Group representatives. The systematic data theft included emergency evacuation plans, infrastructure, vulnerability assessments, and coordination protocols between municipal agencies and federal security organizations. What Emma doesn't realize is that Apex Marketing Group has been under FBI surveillance for 18 months as part of a broader investigation into foreign intelligence operations targeting American infrastructure companies. Dylan revealed, his voice reflecting both professional satisfaction and personal concern about the legal jeopardy facing Emma, Marcus, and Jessica. The federal investigation had been tracking Sino-Pacific Investment Holdings' acquisition of American companies with access to sensitive government contracts and infrastructure information. Meridian Marketing had already been identified as a potential target because of its municipal contracts and employee security clearances, but investigators hadn't realized that company insiders were actively facilitating unauthorized access to classified materials. The FBI counterintelligence agents have been monitoring Apex's communications with Emma for the past 6 weeks. Dylan continued showing me surveillance photos that captured Emma meeting with individuals identified as foreign intelligence operatives at downtown restaurants and hotel lobbies. They have recorded conversations where Emma discusses selling access to government contract information and municipal security protocols. The evidence of Emma's meetings with foreign agents transformed our workplace corruption case into a potential espionage investigation that could result in charges under the Economic Espionage Act and the Foreign Agents Registration Act. The penalties for such crimes included prison sentences of up to 20 years and fines that could reach millions of dollars. Emma has been so focused on her personal vendetta against you and her desire for financial gain that she hasn't realized she's committing federal crimes that could destroy her life permanently. Dylan observed with the analytical detachment of someone who had prosecuted similar cases during his FBI career. Marcus and Jessica's participation in the data theft and unauthorized sale negotiations meant that all three conspirators were potentially facing charges that would make their previous embezzlement and fraud schemes seem trivial by comparison. The systematic theft of government contract information constituted a separate criminal enterprise that could result in additional decades of federal prison time. The irony is devastating, Dylan noted with grim satisfaction. While Emma has been plotting to steal your inheritance and destroy your reputation, she's actually been building a case against herself that will result in federal espionage charges and complete financial ruin for everyone involved in the conspiracy. The timeline for the corporate sale created an urgent need for immediate law enforcement intervention. If Emma succeeded in completing the transaction with Apex Marketing Group, the national security implications could extend far beyond the personal betrayal and workplace corruption we had originally discovered. We need to contact FBI counterintelligence immediately, Dylan concluded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who understood both the legal procedures and the potential consequences of delayed action. Emma's sale negotiations with foreign agents represent an imminent threat to national security that requires federal intervention regardless of our personal desire for justice. The evidence we had compiled for workplace fraud and inheritance manipulation would now serve as supporting documentation for a counter-espionage investigation that could result in headlines, congressional hearings, and prison sentences that would follow Emma, Marcus, and Jessica for the rest of their lives. Monday's confrontation would involve federal agents' classified evidence and legal proceedings that would transform our personal quest for justice into a matter of national security importance. The sister who had stolen my creative work and orchestrated my firing was about to discover that her greed had led her into criminal territory from which there would be no escape or redemption. Sunday evening brought the most unexpected development in our investigation when Detective Maria Santos contacted Dylan directly with a proposal that would turn Emma's criminal accusations into the mechanism for her own arrest. The call came just as we were finalizing our federal evidence package, and Santos's words changed everything about our Monday morning strategy. I've been reviewing the inheritance fraud allegations Emma filed against your friend, Santos told Dylan during their confidential conversation. After 18 years investigating financial crimes, I can recognize fabricated evidence when I see it. The bank statements she submitted have digital signatures that don't match the institution's security protocols, and the medical records contain terminology that wasn't used by healthcare providers during the timeframe she specified. Santos had been conducting her own parallel investigation into Emma's claims, and her experience with elder abuse cases had immediately raised red flags about the documentation Emma provided. The forged bank statements contained metadata inconsistencies that revealed computer manipulation, while the fake medical records included diagnostic codes that hadn't been implemented until after Rose's death. What Emma doesn't realize is that her fabricated evidence constitutes multiple felony charges, including forgery, fraud, and filing false police reports. Santos continued, "Instead of arresting Robbie based on obviously falsified documents, I want to use Emma's own criminal behavior to gather evidence about the broader conspiracy you've been investigating." The detective's proposal involves staging my apparent arrest on Monday morning while actually equipping me with surveillance equipment to record Emma's confession about the inheritance fraud workplace conspiracy and unauthorized corporate sale. The fake arrest would provide perfect cover for gathering evidence while convincing Emma that her elaborate deception had succeeded completely. Well, if Robbie wears a wire during the staged arrest, we can capture Emma's admissions about forging documents, bribing witnesses, and manipulating family members, Santos explained to Dylan. Her overconfidence about winning the legal battle will likely lead her to reveal details about crimes we haven't discovered yet. Dylan's law enforcement contacts had briefed Detective Santos about the federal counter-espionage investigation, and she was eager to coordinate local charges with the broader FBI case against Emma Marcus and Jessica. The staged arrest would serve multiple investigations while ensuring that all evidence collection remained legally admissible for various criminal prosecutions. Santos has worked with federal agencies on joint investigations before, Dylan explained to me after ending the phone call. She understands how to coordinate local criminal charges with national security cases to ensure that none of the evidence gets compromised by jurisdictional conflicts or procedural errors. The logistics of the staged arrest required careful planning to maintain believability while protecting my safety throughout the evidence-gathering operation. Santos would arrive at my apartment Monday morning with uniformed officers and process the arrest using standard procedures, but I would be equipped with recording devices and emergency communication equipment that would allow immediate intervention if the situation became dangerous. The wire equipment will be undetectable even during standard arrest procedures. Dylan assured me, consulting technical specifications provided by Santos's department. The recording devices are designed for undercover operations and can capture clear audio even in stressful situations where background noise might interfere with normal surveillance equipment. Emma's reaction to news of my arrest would be monitored through surveillance teams positioned near her apartment and workplace. Federal agents would observe her communications and movements to document her response to the apparent success of her criminal conspiracy, while local detectives gathered evidence about the inheritance fraud and family manipulation schemes. Emma will probably contact Marcus and Jessica immediately to celebrate their victory, Dylan predicted with the analytical insight of someone who understood criminal psychology. The sense of triumph will lower their guard and encourage them to discuss aspects of the conspiracy they've been careful to keep hidden during normal operations. The staged arrest would also provide an opportunity to test the legal documents Emma had convinced our parents to sign. If she attempted to use the power of attorney provisions to access family assets, or make medical decisions on my behalf, those actions would constitute additional criminal charges that could be documented through real-time surveillance. Santos wants to see if Emma will try to commit me to psychiatric treatment or attempt to seize control of bank accounts based on the fabricated mental health evaluation, Dylan explained. Any such attempts would provide clear evidence of her criminal intent and demonstrate the systematic nature of her manipulation campaign. Attorney Samuel Brooks would coordinate with Detective Santos to ensure that the staged arrest didn't interfere with my legal rights or create complications for civil litigation related to the workplace conspiracy. The timing needed to be precise to gather criminal evidence while preserving my ability to pursue financial damages against Emma Marcus and Jessica through separate legal proceedings. Samuel has experience with cases involving both criminal prosecutions and civil liability, Dylan noted. He'll ensure that Monday's operations support both the immediate criminal investigation and your long-term legal interests as the actual owner of Meridian Marketing. The federal counter-espionage investigation would proceed independently of the staged arrest, but FBI agents would be monitoring Emma's communications to determine if the apparent success of her inheritance fraud encouraged her to accelerate the unauthorized corporate sale to foreign agents. The pressure of multiple investigations converging simultaneously would likely force errors that would provide additional evidence for various criminal charges. Emma's overconfidence has been her weakness throughout this entire conspiracy, Dylan observed with satisfaction. She's been so focused on destroying you that she hasn't realized how many different ways her criminal behavior could be prosecuted under federal and state laws. The recorded confessions from Monday's staged arrest would provide crucial evidence for inheritance, fraud charges, while also supporting the broader federal case against Emma's unauthorized negotiations with foreign intelligence operatives. The combination of local and federal crimes would ensure that Emma faced consequences severe enough to match the scope of her betrayal and criminal activity. By Tuesday morning, Emma will discover that her elaborate scheme to frame you for inheritance fraud has actually provided law enforcement with overwhelming evidence of her own criminal enterprise. Dylan concluded with evident satisfaction. The sister who tried to destroy your life through false accusations will find herself facing genuine federal charges that could result in decades in prison. Monday morning would transform months of careful planning and systematic betrayal into a single moment of justice that would expose the true scope of corruption at Meridian Marketing while protecting national security interests and family assets from further criminal exploitation. The trap Emma had set for me was about to spring shut on her own criminal conspiracy. Monday morning unfolded exactly as Detective Santos had planned with my staged arrest, providing the perfect catalyst for Emma, Marcus, and Jessica to reveal the true scope of their criminal conspiracy. The wire equipment captured every word as the three conspirators gathered at Marcus's apartment to celebrate what they believed was their complete victory over my attempts to expose their crimes. "I can't believe how perfectly everything worked out," Emma's voice rang clear through the surveillance equipment as she entered Marcus's living room just after 10 a.m. Robbie looked completely devastated when they put her in handcuffs. The inheritance fraud charges are going to stick, and now we can move forward with the Apex sale without any interference from her. Marcus poured champagne into 3 glasses, his earlier nervousness replaced by triumphant confidence that the wire captured in perfect detail. The timing couldn't have been better. With Robbie facing criminal charges, no one will believe anything she says about workplace irregularities or financial discrepancies. We're completely protected from any future accusations. Jessica raised her glass in a toast that would provide prosecutors with clear evidence of their consciousness of guilt. "To the perfect crime," she declared with obvious satisfaction. "Emma, your plan to frame Robbie for inheritance fraud while we looted the company was absolutely brilliant. She never saw it coming." The recorded celebration continued for nearly an hour, with each conspirator revealing crimes that exceeded even our most comprehensive investigation. Emma admitted to forging not just bank statements and medical records, but also to bribing witnesses and manipulating evidence to support her false accusations against me. Getting Margaret Thompson to sign that witness statement was easier than I expected, Emma confessed while reviewing documents she planned to submit in probate court. After I planted suggestions about Robbie's suspicious behavior, Margaret was eager to help protect an elderly woman from financial abuse. She has no idea that everything she witnessed was completely normal family interaction that I twisted into evidence of manipulation. Marcus revealed criminal activities that extended far beyond the embezzlement we had documented through company financial records. The fake vendor scheme was just the beginning, he admitted, while showing Emma receipts from his latest casino visits. "I've been skimming money from client project budgets, overcharging for printing services, and even selling office equipment through online auctions to cover my gambling debts." The scope of Marcus's theft was staggering when he detailed the full extent of his criminal enterprise. Between the fake vendors, the budget manipulation, and the equipment sales, I've diverted almost $70,000 over the past 10 months. The beautiful part is that Emma's promotion to creative director gave her authority to approve expenses without detailed oversight, so I could expand the operation without worrying about detection. Jessica's confessions revealed her role as the intelligence coordinator for criminal activities that now clearly constituted organized fraud under federal racketeering statutes. I've been tracking every employee's schedule, monitoring their access to sensitive information, and even reading their personal emails through the company server to identify potential threats to our operations. The systematic surveillance Jessica described included activities that violated numerous federal privacy laws and computer fraud statutes. I know which employees have security clearances for government contracts, who has access to classified municipal information, and which people might notice discrepancies in financial records or vendor relationships. She continued with obvious pride in her criminal sophistication. Emma's next revelation provided the most damaging evidence, yet captured by the surveillance equipment. The Apex marketing sale is going to make all of this theft look like pocket change, she declared while reviewing contract documents. They're paying us $2.4 million for the company assets, client contracts, and proprietary information, plus individual consulting fees that will set us up financially for life. Marcus expressed concerns about the foreign ownership of Apex Marketing that revealed his awareness of potential national security violations. Are you sure we won't get in trouble for selling government contract information to Chinese investors? Some of those municipal files contain pretty sensitive infrastructure data. Emma's response demonstrated clear criminal intent regarding espionage charges. The FBI doesn't monitor small marketing companies like Meridian. By the time anyone realizes that sensitive information has been transferred to foreign agents, we'll have our money and be working for Apex in positions that provide legal cover for our access to classified materials. Jessica added details about the systematic theft of government information that would provide federal prosecutors with overwhelming evidence of economic espionage. I've already copied the complete files for the Metro Transportation Security Protocols, the Emergency Management Communication Systems, and the Water Treatment Plant vulnerability assessments. Apex specifically requested that information as part of their evaluation of our strategic value. The recorded conversation continued with Emma revealing the depth of her manipulation of our family relationships and the legal system. Getting mom and dad to sign the power of attorney documents was the key to everything, she explained while reviewing legal papers. Now I can claim that Robbie's mental instability makes her unfit to manage any inheritance money, while simultaneously positioning myself as the responsible family member who should control all disputed assets. Marcus asked about the fabricated evidence Emma had submitted to Detective Santos, providing another opportunity for her to detail criminal activities on tape. The bank statements and medical records look completely authentic, Emma boasted with obvious satisfaction. Patricia Vaughn has contacts at financial institutions and healthcare facilities who provide blank forms and digital signatures that can't be detected through normal verification procedures. The admission that Emma had been working with corrupt employees at banks and medical facilities to produce fraudulent documents would provide additional federal charges related to conspiracy and institutional fraud. Patricia charges premium rates for that level of document authentication. Emma continued, but it's worth every penny to ensure that the evidence against Robbie will withstand legal scrutiny. Jessica revealed her role in coordinating social media campaigns designed to destroy my reputation and credibility. The Facebook posts and Twitter messages created a digital trail showing Robbie's alleged mental decline over several months, she explained while scrolling through her phone. I coordinated with Emma to time the social media evidence with workplace incidents and family concerns to create a comprehensive narrative of psychological instability. The surveillance equipment captured Emma's most chilling admission as she described her long-term planning for the conspiracy. I've been recording family conversations for over 2 years, gathering personal information about everyone's financial concerns, health issues, and relationship problems, she revealed while showing Marcus files on her laptop. The recordings helped me understand exactly which emotional buttons to push with mom and dad to convince them that Robbie needed legal intervention. Marcus expressed amazement at the sophistication of Emma's manipulation tactics. You actually recorded private family conversations to use as weapons against your own sister. That's incredibly calculated and thorough planning. Emma's response revealed the depth of her psychological calculation and criminal intent. Family loyalty is a weakness that can be exploited, just like any other emotional vulnerability. I identified exactly what mom and dad needed to hear to make them believe that signing those legal documents was protecting both daughters, rather than enabling one daughter to destroy the other. The recording session captured additional admissions about bribing city officials, manipulating government contract bids, and coordinating with foreign agents that would provide federal prosecutors with evidence for multiple felony charges under various criminal statutes. By noon, we had recorded over 90 minutes of detailed confessions that documented crimes ranging from inheritance, fraud, to economic espionage. As the celebration at Marcus's apartment concluded, Emma made one final statement that summarized the entire criminal conspiracy. Robbie thought she was so smart with her college degree and her creative talent, but she never understood that success requires eliminating anyone who stands in your way. By tomorrow, she'll be facing criminal charges while we're counting money from the biggest business deal of our lives. The irony was perfect. While Emma celebrated destroying my life through false criminal accusations, she had actually provided law enforcement with recorded evidence of her own extensive criminal enterprise that would result in federal charges carrying decades of prison time. Tuesday morning brought the moment I had been anticipating with a mixture of anxiety and satisfaction since Detective Santos first proposed our elaborate sting operation. Walking into the Meridian Marketing Conference Room flanked by FBI agents Detective Santos and attorney Samuel Brooks felt like emerging from a nightmare into the bright light of justice finally served. Emma stood at the head of the mahogany table where she had handed me termination papers just 1 week earlier, presenting the supposed company sale to bewildered employees who had arrived expecting a routine staff meeting. Her perfectly styled blonde hair caught the morning sunlight streaming through tall windows, and her confident voice carried the authoritative tone she had perfected while stealing my creative work and orchestrating my professional destruction. As you all know, Meridian Marketing has been exploring strategic partnerships to expand our capabilities and reach new markets. Emma announced to the assembled staff, completely unaware that federal agents were recording every word. Today, I'm pleased to announce our acquisition by Apex Marketing Group, a dynamic firm that will provide exciting opportunities for career advancement and professional growth. The employees looked confused and concerned as Emma continued her presentation without any acknowledgement that major corporate transactions typically required approval from actual company ownership rather than recently promoted managers. Marcus stood beside her, nodding supportively while Jessica distributed informational packets about employment transitions and benefit transfers. That was the moment I chose to make my entrance. I'm afraid there's been a significant misunderstanding about company ownership and authorization for any sales. I announced, stepping into the conference room with the calm authority of someone finally able to reveal the truth after months of deception and betrayal. Emma's face went white as she recognized my voice, her confident presentation faltering as she turned to see me flanked by law enforcement officials and legal representatives. The termination papers that had seemed like such a complete victory just 7 days earlier suddenly took on an entirely different meaning. Dugobs, I am the actual owner of Meridian Marketing Solutions through Pinnacle Holdings, LLC. I continued presenting legal documents that had been authenticated by the Secretary of State's office and verified by independent legal counsel. I purchased controlling shares of this company 2 months ago, which means that every person in this room is actually my employee, not Emma's. The conference room erupted in confused murmurs as employees processed the revelation that their recent termination of a junior graphic designer had actually been the firing of their company owner. Marcus attempted to deny everything, while Jessica moved toward the door, but FBI agents positioned throughout the building prevented any escape attempts. Against Emma Walsh, Marcus Rodriguez, and Jessica Walsh, you are under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, embezzlement, forgery, and violations of the Economic Espionage Act, announced Special Agent Patricia Chen, stepping forward with handcuffs and federal warrants that had been prepared based on the evidence we had compiled over the past week. The timing was perfect. Emma's attempted sale of the company to foreign agents had been scheduled for Friday, but her acceleration of the inheritance fraud charges and her celebration with Marcus and Jessica had provided federal prosecutors with enough evidence to pursue immediate arrests on multiple criminal counts. You have the right to remain silent, Agent Chen continued while placing Emma in handcuffs. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. If you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. Emma's shock was complete and devastating as she realized that her elaborate conspiracy had collapsed in the span of minutes. The sister she thought she had destroyed through false criminal accusations was actually the owner of everything she had tried to steal, while her own criminal behavior had been documented through surveillance equipment she never knew existed. Marcus attempted to flee through the emergency exit, but was intercepted by Detective Santos, who had been monitoring the building's perimeter to ensure that none of the conspirators could escape once the arrest began. His gambling addiction and embezzlement scheme had evolved into federal charges that would follow him for decades. The vendor fraud alone constitutes 73 separate counts of wire fraud and money laundering, Agent Chen explained to the assembled employees as Marcus was led away in handcuffs. Combined with the conspiracy charges and the espionage allegations, Mr. Rodriguez is facing potential prison sentences that could exceed 30 years. Jessica's arrest was particularly satisfying because her role as the intelligence coordinator had made her essential to both the workplace conspiracy and the unauthorized sale to foreign agents. Her systematic theft of classified government information had elevated her criminal liability to the level of national security violations. Ms. Walsh's access to municipal infrastructure data and her coordination with foreign intelligence operatives constitutes multiple violations of the Economic Espionage Act, Agent Chen announced as Jessica was processed for federal custody. The penalties for such crimes include prison sentences of up to 20 years and fines that can reach millions of dollars. The remaining employees watched in stunned silence as the three people who had seemed to control their professional destinies were led away in handcuffs. The workplace conspiracy that had operated so smoothly for months had been exposed as a criminal enterprise that threatened both individual careers and national security interests. Everyone else will keep their jobs and receive immediate salary increases, I announced to the remaining staff, hoping to restore some stability to their professional lives after the trauma of witnessing federal arrests. The criminal behavior was limited to 3 individuals, and this company will continue to operate with the highest ethical standards. Dylan stepped forward to address concerns about company stability and future operations. We'll be implementing new financial oversight procedures and management structures to ensure that nothing like this ever happens again. Your jobs are secure, and your contributions to legitimate company success will be recognized and rewarded appropriately. Attorney Samuel Brooks distributed informational packets about employee rights during federal investigations and provided contact information for counseling services that would help staff process the emotional impact of discovering that their workplace had been infiltrated by criminal conspirators. Some of you may be contacted by federal investigators as witnesses, Samuel explained with calm professionalism. Your cooperation with law enforcement is voluntary, and the company will provide legal support if you have any concerns about your testimony or potential liability. The transformation of the conference room from Emma's triumphant sale presentation to a federal arrest scene symbolized the complete reversal of fortune that had occurred over the past week. The termination papers that had seemed like the end of my professional life had actually been the beginning of justice for systematic betrayal and criminal exploitation. As federal agents led Emma Marcus and Jessica away in handcuffs, I felt a mixture of satisfaction and sadness that comes with the end of relationships that had once meant everything to me. The sister I had loved, the boss I had respected, and the friend I had trusted had revealed themselves to be criminals whose greed had led them into territory from which there could be no return. The employees who remained gathered around me with expressions of curiosity, concern, and cautious relief as they began to understand that their company would continue to operate under ownership that valued integrity over profit. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but today had delivered the justice that months of betrayal and systematic deception had made inevitable. The federal courthouse buzzer echoed through the packed gallery as prosecuting attorney Margaret Foster began presenting evidence that would expose the full scope of the conspiracy that had nearly destroyed my life and threatened national security. The preliminary hearing was scheduled to determine whether Emma Marcus and Jessica would be held pending trial, but the evidence presentation quickly became a comprehensive overview of criminal activities that shocked even experienced law enforcement officials. Ladies and gentlemen, what we have before us today is not a simple case of workplace fraud or sibling rivalry, Foster announced, addressing Judge William Harrison and the packed courtroom. This is a systematic criminal enterprise that included inheritance fraud, identity theft, embezzlement, espionage, and conspiracy to sell sensitive government information to foreign intelligence operatives. The first piece of evidence presented was security footage that I had never seen before, captured by hidden cameras I had installed in my apartment after suspecting theft, but had forgotten about during the chaos of recent events. The high-definition recordings showed Emma using a copied key to enter my home 17 different times over 6 months, systematically photographing my creative work and stealing personal documents. The defendant, Emma Walsh, can be clearly observed entering the victim's apartment at 2:30 a.m. on March 15th. Foster continued pointing to timestamp information on the video display. She proceeds directly to the victim's home office, where she photographs sketchbooks, copies computer files onto flash drives, and removes bank statements that would later be altered for use in fraudulent legal proceedings. The footage was devastating in its clarity and comprehensive documentation. Emma moved through my apartment with obvious familiarity, indicating that the theft had been occurring for far longer than 6 months. She knew exactly where to find my creative materials, financial documents, and personal correspondence, suggesting months or possibly years of unauthorized access. On April 22nd, we see the defendant spending over an hour in the victim's apartment. Foster continued advancing the video timeline to show Emma reviewing my computer files and email correspondence. She accesses password-protected financial accounts, downloads private correspondence with family members, and photographs personal documents that would later be used to support false allegations of mental instability. Additional security footage from the Meridian marketing office revealed the systematic nature of Emma's creative theft and her coordination with Marcus and Jessica to manipulate project assignments and client presentations. The recordings showed Emma accessing my computer workstation during lunch breaks and after-hours periods when she believed the office was empty. The office surveillance demonstrates a pattern of intellectual property theft that spans 18 months. Foster explained while displaying timestamp data that correlated Emma's computer access with my subsequent creative presentations. Every major campaign that earned the defendant recognition and promotions was based on original work stolen from the victim's personal files and creative development process. The court viewing area buzzed with shocked murmurs as Foster presented audio recordings from Emma's celebration with Marcus and Jessica. The crystal-clear conversations captured through my surveillance wire provided detailed confessions about inheritance fraud, workplace conspiracy, and unauthorized negotiations with foreign intelligence operatives. In her own words, the defendant, Emma Walsh, admits to forging bank statements and medical records to support false criminal allegations against her sister. Foster announced while playing selected excerpts from the recorded celebration. She also confesses to bribing witnesses, manipulating family members, and coordinating with private investigators to produce fraudulent evidence for legal proceedings. Emma's voice filled the courtroom as the recordings played her most damaging admissions. Getting mom and dad to sign the power of attorney documents was the key to everything. Now I can claim that Robbie's mental instability makes her unfit to manage any inheritance money while simultaneously positioning myself as the responsible family member who should control all disputed assets. Marcus's confessions about embezzlement and gambling addiction provided evidence of financial crimes that exceeded $70,000 in stolen company assets. The fake vendor scheme was just the beginning, his recorded voice revealed to the silent courtroom. I've been skimming money from client project budgets, overcharging for printing services, and even selling office equipment through online auctions to cover my gambling debts. Jessica's recorded admissions about systematic surveillance and intelligence gathering demonstrated her central role in coordinating criminal activities across multiple areas of company operations. I've been tracking every employee's schedule, monitoring their access to sensitive information, and even reading their personal emails through the company server to identify potential threats to our operations. Foster then presented evidence of the most serious charges violations of the Economic Espionage Act related to the unauthorized sale of classified government information to foreign intelligence operatives. The defendants had systematically stolen municipal infrastructure, data emergency management protocols, and security assessments for the purpose of selling this information to Chinese nationals with documented ties to intelligence services. The classified documents recovered from Emma's laptop and Jessica's phone included detailed information about local transportation and security, water treatment facility, vulnerabilities, and emergency response coordination that could pose serious risks to public safety if exploited by foreign adversaries. Agent Patricia Chen of the FBI's Counterintelligence Division will testify that the defendants were recorded discussing the sale of classified infrastructure information to representatives of Sino-Pacific Investment Holdings, an organization under federal surveillance for suspected intelligence operations targeting American municipalities, Foster announced. The evidence presentation concluded with financial records showing the scope of the conspiracy's impact on both personal and corporate assets. The defendants' criminal activities resulted in over $120,000 in direct financial losses, plus immeasurable damage to the victim's professional reputation, family relationships, and personal well-being. Defense attorney Michael Chen attempted to argue that the charges were excessive and that his clients had been manipulated by circumstances beyond their control, but Judge Harrison's expression suggested little sympathy for the systematic nature of the criminal conspiracy. The court finds that the evidence presented demonstrates a clear and convincing case of premeditated criminal activity that poses ongoing risks to both individual victims and national security interests, Judge Harrison announced after reviewing the evidence materials. The defendants will be held without bail pending trial on all federal charges. Emma's face showed complete devastation as she realized that the elaborate conspiracy she had orchestrated to destroy my life had actually provided federal prosecutors with overwhelming evidence of her own criminal enterprise. The termination papers that had seemed like such a complete victory just 2 weeks earlier had initiated a sequence of events that exposed crimes carrying potential prison sentences of decades. Marcus and Jessica appeared equally shocked as they absorbed the reality that their workplace conspiracy had evolved into federal charges that would follow them for the rest of their lives. The gambling addiction and social media manipulation that had seemed like manageable personal problems had become evidence in a case involving national security violations and organized criminal activity. As the defendants were led away in shackles, I felt the deep satisfaction that comes with truth finally overcoming deception. The evidence presented in court had revealed not just individual crimes, but a systematic pattern of betrayal that had threatened everything I valued most: my family, my career, my reputation, and my sense of personal identity. Tomorrow would bring new challenges as the legal proceedings continued, but today had demonstrated that justice could prevail even against the most sophisticated criminal conspiracies when truth and evidence were presented with clarity and precision. Thursday morning's court session brought revelations that elevated the case from criminal fraud to psychological manipulation, so systematic and comprehensive that it redefined my understanding of Emma's capacity for calculated cruelty. Special Prosecutor Janet Williams presented evidence recovered from Emma's personal devices that documented years of premeditated emotional abuse designed to isolate me from family support while positioning her for maximum financial advantage. What the court will see today goes beyond workplace fraud or inheritance disputes. Williams announced addressing Judge Harrison and the packed gallery. The defendant, Emma Walsh, had been secretly recording private family conversations for over 4 years, gathering personal information to use as psychological weapons against relatives who might interfere with her criminal enterprises. The digital evidence recovered from Emma's cloud storage included hundreds of audio files captured through hidden recording apps on her smartphone during family gatherings, private phone conversations, and intimate discussions that should have been protected by the basic trust that binds families together. Audio file number 1 was recorded during Christmas dinner 3 years ago. Williams explained while cueing the playback system. The defendant secretly captured her parents discussing their father's early signs of memory loss and their concerns about his ability to continue managing family finances independently. The courtroom listened in horrified silence as my father's voice filled the space discussing personal health concerns he had shared only with family members during what he believed was a private family conversation. Emma had recorded his admission that he sometimes forgot important appointments and had begun relying more heavily on my mother for financial decision-making. The defendant later used this privately recorded information to support her claims that the family was experiencing cognitive decline that made them vulnerable to manipulation. Williams continued displaying timeline evidence that showed Emma referencing these health concerns in her fabricated psychological evaluation of me. Additional audio files revealed Emma practicing emotional manipulation techniques before important family confrontations. Audio file number 12 captures the defendant rehearsing fake crying and developing specific phrases designed to trigger emotional responses from her parents, Williams announced while playing recordings that made my stomach turn with disgust. Emma's voice filled the courtroom as she practiced different versions of the same manipulative script. "I'm so worried about Robbie's mental state since grandmother Rose died. She's been making paranoid accusations about work and seems to think everyone is plotting against her. I don't know how to help someone who won't admit they need professional intervention." The recordings showed Emma testing various emotional tones and word choices to maximize the psychological impact of her false concerns about my mental health. She practiced timing her voice breaks and tears to coincide with specific phrases that would trigger protective instincts in our parents. Audio file number 18 demonstrates the defendant's systematic manipulation of family relationships over multiple years. Williams continued presenting evidence that revealed the true scope of Emma's psychological campaign. She recorded private conversations between family members, then used that information to create conflicts and misunderstandings that isolated potential allies from the victim. The most devastating evidence was a recorded conversation between Emma and our cousin Derek, where she admitted to manipulating family dynamics for years, before the inheritance issue ever arose. I've been keeping detailed files on everyone's personal problems and financial concerns since college. Emma's voice revealed to the silent courtroom. Information is power, and family members are easier to control when you understand exactly which emotional buttons to push. Derek's recorded voice expressed shock at Emma's admission. "You've been secretly recording family conversations for years, just to gather information you could use against people later. That's incredibly disturbing and manipulative." Emma's response revealed the calculated nature of her long-term planning. Family loyalty is a weakness that can be exploited just like any other emotional vulnerability. I've been documenting everyone's secret fears and personal struggles so I could use that information when I needed to influence important family decisions. The audio files also included recordings Emma had made of my private phone conversations with friends and romantic partners over the past 3 years. She had been using recording apps to capture intimate discussions about my professional frustrations, relationship concerns, and personal insecurities. The defendant systematically violated her sister's privacy by recording personal phone conversations without consent. Williams announced while presenting evidence of over 40 recorded calls. She later used information from these private conversations to support false claims about mental instability and emotional dysfunction. One particularly damaging recording captured a conversation where I discussed my suspicions about workplace theft with my former boyfriend, David Martinez. Emma had edited portions of that conversation to make it appear that I was making paranoid accusations without evidence, then included the manipulated audio in her fabricated psychological evaluation. The evidence presentation revealed that Emma had been coordinating with private investigator Patricia Vaughn for over 2 years, not just the recent months related to the inheritance investigation. The defendant had been paying for professional surveillance and background investigations on family members since her junior year of college. Williams explained displaying financial records that showed regular payments to Vaughn's investigative services. Patricia Vaughn was instructed to gather compromising information about the victim's personal relationships, financial decisions, and emotional state that could be used to undermine her credibility if she ever posed a threat to the defendant's personal or professional advancement. Williams continued reading from recovered email communications between Emma and the private investigator. The surveillance had included tracking my dating relationships, monitoring my social media activities, and even conducting background checks on friends and romantic partners to identify information that could be used against me. Emma had been building a comprehensive psychological profile that would allow her to destroy my reputation and credibility whenever it became necessary. The defendant's manipulation extended to creating false social media accounts to spread rumors and negative information about her sister. Williams announced while displaying evidence of fake Facebook and Twitter profiles Emma had created using variations of my name and personal information. The fake social media accounts had been used to post embarrassing content, engage in online arguments with former colleagues, and create a digital trail of evidence suggesting mental instability and poor judgment. Emma had been systematically poisoning my online reputation for over 18 months before the workplace conspiracy ever began. Judge Harrison's expression showed obvious disgust as he reviewed the evidence of systematic psychological manipulation that spanned years of calculated emotional abuse. The court has rarely encountered criminal behavior that demonstrates such comprehensive planning and callous disregard for family relationships, he observed while examining timeline documentation. The most chilling revelation was Emma's recorded conversation with herself captured accidentally when she left her phone recording after practicing manipulation techniques. Robbie has always been too trusting and emotionally vulnerable, her voice revealed to the silent courtroom. She actually believes that family love is unconditional and that people can be trusted to act with integrity. That naivety makes her the perfect victim for someone willing to exploit emotional weaknesses systematically. Williams concluded the evidence presentation by demonstrating how Emma's years of psychological manipulation had created the perfect foundation for the inheritance fraud, workplace conspiracy, and espionage charges. The defendant spent years gathering intelligence about her victim's vulnerabilities, then used that information to orchestrate a comprehensive criminal enterprise that threatened both personal welfare and national security. As the court session ended, I understood that Emma's betrayal extended far beyond recent events to encompass years of systematic emotional abuse that had shaped my understanding of family relationships and personal trust. The sister I had loved unconditionally had been treating me as an adversary to be defeated through psychological warfare for longer than I could have imagined possible. The evidence presented today revealed that my termination from Meridian Marketing was just the culmination of a campaign that had been building for years, waiting for the right opportunity to destroy everything I valued about my life and relationships. Tomorrow would bring the final pieces of the legal puzzle, but today had exposed the true depth of calculated cruelty that made Emma's criminal behavior a threat to anyone who trusted her with their emotional vulnerability. Friday morning brought the coordinated federal operation that would finally bring comprehensive justice to all participants in the conspiracy that had threatened both my personal welfare and national security interests. At exactly 9 a.m., FBI agents executed simultaneous arrest warrants in a carefully orchestrated raid designed to prevent communication between conspirators and secure all evidence before it could be destroyed. Special Agent Patricia Chen led the team that arrested Emma at her downtown apartment, where she had been preparing to flee the country using falsified travel documents and offshore bank accounts that federal investigators had been monitoring for weeks. The timing was perfect, as Emma believed the inheritance fraud charges against me would provide sufficient cover for her escape, while the heat from the federal investigation subsided. Dime. Emma Walsh, you are under arrest for additional charges, including conspiracy to commit espionage, money laundering, identity theft, and violation of federal immigration laws, Agent Chen announced as she placed Emma in handcuffs. The travel documents in your possession have been determined to be fraudulent, and your attempted flight constitutes additional evidence of consciousness of guilt. Simultaneously, federal agents arrested Marcus outside the Belmont racetrack, where surveillance teams had observed him placing desperate bets with money stolen from his mother's retirement account. His gambling addiction had escalated beyond company embezzlement to outright theft from family members who trusted him with access to their financial accounts during medical emergencies. Marcus Rodriguez, you are under arrest for additional charges of elder financial abuse, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit espionage, announced Special Agent David Park as Marcus was taken into custody. The investigation has revealed that your criminal activities extended beyond workplace fraud to systematic theft from multiple victims, including elderly family members who relied on your assistance with banking and investment management. Jessica's arrest occurred at her yoga studio, where she had been conducting what appeared to be a normal fitness class, but was actually a covert meeting with Chinese intelligence operatives disguised as wellness enthusiasts. Federal surveillance had documented her passing classified municipal infrastructure information during seemingly innocent conversations about meditation techniques and stress management. Boyds. Jessica Walsh, you are under arrest for violations of the Economic Espionage Act, conspiracy to commit espionage, and providing material support to foreign intelligence operations, announced Special Agent Michelle Torres as Jessica was removed from the studio in handcuffs. Your coordination with foreign agents has been under federal surveillance for 8 months, and we have comprehensive evidence of your systematic theft of classified government information. The scope of the federal operation extended beyond the 3 primary conspirators to include arrest of corrupt officials who had accepted bribes and facilitated unauthorized access to sensitive municipal information. City Council member Thomas Bradley was arrested at City Hall along with 2 other municipal employees who had been selling infrastructure data to private intelligence services. The investigation has revealed a network of corruption that extends throughout local government and private sector organizations. Agent Chen announced during a press conference held outside the federal courthouse. Multiple city officials accepted bribes in exchange for providing classified information about emergency management protocols, transportation and security measures, and infrastructure vulnerability assessments. Bradley's arrest was particularly significant because his position on the Emergency Management Committee had given him access to classified federal information about disaster response coordination and homeland security protocols. The intelligence he sold to Emma's conspiracy included details about communication systems, evacuation procedures, and coordination protocols between local agencies and federal security organizations. Thomas Bradley's cooperation with foreign intelligence operatives constitutes a serious breach of national security that could have endangered public safety during emergency situations. Agent Chen continued explaining the broader implications of the conspiracy. The classified information he provided could have been used to exploit vulnerabilities in local infrastructure or disrupt emergency response operations during natural disasters or terrorist attacks. The financial scope of the corruption network was revealed through seized bank accounts and recovered assets that demonstrated the extensive criminal enterprise Emma had been coordinating. Federal investigators had identified over $300,000 in illegal proceeds distributed among the various conspirators and corrupt officials. Dibaim. Asset forfeiture proceedings have been initiated to recover stolen funds and ensure that victims receive appropriate restitution for financial losses incurred through the criminal conspiracy. Agent Chen announced the defendants will also face civil liability for damages related to identity theft, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Private investigator Patricia Vaughn was arrested at her office, where federal agents discovered evidence of multiple ongoing criminal investigations involving surveillance fraud, identity theft, and illegal wiretapping on behalf of clients engaged in domestic disputes and business conflicts. Patricia Vaughn's investigative services included criminal activities that violated federal privacy laws, computer fraud statutes, and surveillance regulations. Agent Torres explained during the press briefing. Her cooperation with Emma Walsh was part of a broader pattern of criminal behavior that affected dozens of victims across multiple states. The arrests were coordinated with international law enforcement agencies to ensure that foreign intelligence operatives who had been working with the domestic conspirators were also apprehended. Interpol agents in Hong Kong and Shanghai arrested 3 Chinese nationals who had been receiving classified American infrastructure information through the network Emma had been coordinating. International cooperation has been essential to disrupting the foreign intelligence operation and preventing further exploitation of American infrastructure vulnerabilities, Agent Chen noted during the press conference. The arrests in China demonstrate the global scope of the espionage network and the international security implications of domestic corruption. Attorney Samuel Brooks held a separate press conference to address my legal status and the resolution of false charges that had been filed against me. All inheritance fraud allegations against my client have been formally dismissed with prejudice. Brooks announced to assembled media representatives. The evidence clearly demonstrates that these charges were based on fabricated documents and false testimony provided by criminal conspirators. The dismissal of charges against me was accompanied by a formal apology from Detective Santos and the District Attorney's Office, acknowledging that the investigation had revealed systematic evidence fraud that had initially misled law enforcement officials. Law enforcement agencies have cooperated fully with federal investigators to ensure that all evidence of criminal conspiracy has been properly documented and that appropriate charges have been filed against all participants, Santos announced during the joint press conference. The complexity of this case required extensive coordination between local, state, and federal agencies to address both the personal crimes and the national security violations. The coordinated arrests concluded with the seizure of Apex Marketing Group's American assets and the freezing of bank accounts associated with Sino-Pacific Investment Holdings. Federal authorities had been monitoring the organization's activities for months, using the conspiracy with Emma as an opportunity to gather intelligence about broader foreign espionage operations targeting American infrastructure companies. Now, the disruption of this foreign intelligence network has prevented the acquisition of sensitive American infrastructure information and protected municipal security systems from potential exploitation, Agent Chen concluded during the final press briefing. The arrests demonstrate the serious consequences of domestic corruption that facilitates foreign espionage operations against American interests. As news coverage of the arrest dominated local and national media, I felt the profound satisfaction that comes with comprehensive justice finally being served. The conspiracy that had threatened to destroy my life career and family relationships had been exposed as a criminal enterprise that posed risks extending far beyond personal betrayal to include genuine threats to national security and public safety. Emma Marcus and Jessica would now face federal charges carrying potential prison sentences of decades, while the corrupt officials and foreign operatives who had facilitated their crimes would also be held accountable through the American justice system and international law enforcement cooperation. 6 months after the coordinated federal arrest that exposed the full scope of Emma's criminal conspiracy, I stood in the renovated conference room at Meridian Marketing Solutions, looking out at employees whose faces reflected the positive transformation that had occurred when ethical leadership replaced systematic corruption. The morning sunlight streamed through new energy-efficient windows, illuminating a workspace that had been completely rebuilt around principles of integrity, creativity, and genuine collaboration. Today marks the official launch of our certified B Corporation status. I announced to the assembled team of 32 employees who had chosen to remain with the company through the transition period. This certification represents our commitment to using business as a force for positive social and environmental impact, ensuring that every decision we make considers the welfare of employees, clients, and the broader community. Dylan had accepted the position of Chief Operating Officer, bringing his forensic accounting expertise and ethical leadership to every aspect of company operations. His experience prosecuting white-collar crime had proven invaluable in implementing oversight procedures that would prevent future corruption while maintaining the creative freedom that made our work meaningful and innovative. The new profit-sharing plan ensures that everyone who contributes to our success shares in the financial rewards, Dylan announced while distributing information packets about the employee ownership program we had implemented. Your creativity, hard work, and commitment to ethical practices directly impact your personal financial success, creating alignment between individual achievement and company prosperity. The transformation of Meridian Marketing into an ethical business had exceeded my expectations for both financial performance and employee satisfaction. Our focus on supporting local entrepreneurs and nonprofit organizations had attracted clients who valued integrity over purely profit-driven advertising strategies, resulting in revenue growth that surpassed the previous year's performance, despite losing the government contracts that had been compromised by security breaches. Though our client base now includes 47 small businesses, 12 nonprofit organizations, and 6 municipal agencies that have been thoroughly vetted for security clearance requirements, I explained while reviewing our portfolio of projects that reflected our commitment to positive community impact. Every campaign we develop is designed to support ethical business practices and promote genuine value for consumers, rather than manipulative advertising tactics. The legal proceedings against Emma, Marcus, and Jessica had concluded with comprehensive convictions that would follow them for decades. Emma received a federal prison sentence of 12 years for conspiracy to commit espionage, inheritance fraud, identity theft, and multiple counts of wire fraud. Marcus was sentenced to 8 years for embezzlement, money laundering, and conspiracy charges related to his gambling addiction and systematic theft. Jessica received a 10-year sentence for espionage, computer fraud, and conspiracy charges related to her coordination of intelligence theft. The restitution payments will continue for the next 15 years. Attorney Samuel Brooks had explained during our final meeting about the criminal cases. The defendants are required to compensate not only for direct financial losses, but also for emotional distress, defamation damages, and the costs associated with security upgrades needed to protect sensitive government information. Private investigator Patricia Vaughn received a 6-year federal prison sentence for conspiracy, surveillance fraud, and violation of privacy laws. City Council member Thomas Bradley was sentenced to 14 years for espionage, bribery, and conspiracy charges related to his sale of classified infrastructure information to foreign intelligence operatives. The international cooperation resulted in successful prosecutions of the Chinese intelligence operatives who were receiving stolen American infrastructure data. FBI Special Agent Patricia Chen had reported during the final briefing about the espionage network. The disruption of this foreign intelligence operation has strengthened security protocols for municipal infrastructure information and improved coordination between local agencies and federal security organizations. My relationship with our parents had been slowly rebuilt through family counseling sessions that emphasized honest communication and the importance of verifying information before making important decisions about family welfare. Frank and Carol had been devastated to learn how thoroughly Emma had manipulated their love and concern to enable her criminal enterprises. We should have asked more questions and gotten independent verification before signing those legal documents, my father had admitted during one of our counseling sessions. Emma presented everything so professionally, and we were scared about the possibility of mental health problems that we didn't take time to investigate the claims properly. The power of attorney documents had been legally voided, and our parents had established new estate planning arrangements that included safeguards against future manipulation by family members or outside parties. The experience had taught all of us valuable lessons about the importance of maintaining healthy skepticism even toward people we love and trust. Family relationships require the same ethical standards that we apply to business partnerships, our counselor had observed during the final family therapy session. Love and trust must be balanced with appropriate verification and communication to prevent the kind of systematic manipulation that occurred in this situation. The most rewarding aspect of the company's transformation had been watching employees develop their creative potential in an environment that valued originality over competitive manipulation. Without the toxic influence of Emma's stolen ideas and Marcus's financial pressure, the creative team had produced innovative campaigns that earned industry recognition. while supporting clients' genuine business objectives. The Riverside Community Gardens campaign won the Regional Advertising Council's Award for Social Impact Marketing, announced creative director Sarah Thompson, who had been promoted to replace Emma based on her authentic creative talent and collaborative leadership style. The campaign increased community participation by 68%, while staying within the nonprofit's limited budget constraints. Sarah's promotion represented the kind of advancement that became possible when creative recognition was based on actual talent, rather than stolen ideas and systematic manipulation. Her innovative approach to sustainable advertising had attracted environmentally conscious clients who valued authenticity over purely profit-driven marketing strategies. The company's success had also enabled us to establish the Rose Memorial Scholarship Fund, providing financial assistance to young women pursuing careers in graphic design and marketing. The scholarship program honored my grandmother's legacy while ensuring that future creative professionals would have opportunities to develop their talents without facing the kind of systematic theft and manipulation I had experienced. This year's scholarship recipients include 5 women from diverse backgrounds who demonstrate both creative talent and commitment to ethical business practices. I announced while reviewing applications that reflected the positive impact of investing in emerging professionals. Their work will contribute to advertising industry evolution toward more responsible and socially conscious marketing approaches. As I concluded the morning meeting and watched employees return to projects that reflected their genuine creativity and collaborative spirit, I felt the deep satisfaction that comes from transforming betrayal and criminal conspiracy into positive social impact and sustainable business success. Emma's attempt to destroy my life through systematic theft and manipulation had ultimately provided the catalyst for building something much better than anything that existed before the conspiracy was exposed. The company that emerged from the corruption had become a model for ethical business practices, while my personal growth had demonstrated the possibility of healing and transformation, even after experiencing profound betrayal. The termination papers that had seemed like the end of my professional world 6 months ago now served as a reminder of how quickly circumstances can change when truth and justice are pursued with determination and appropriate support. The sister who had tried to steal my identity and destroy my future had inadvertently provided the opportunity to create a legacy that would benefit employees, clients, and community members for years to come. Have you ever experienced a situation where someone's betrayal ultimately led to positive changes in your life that wouldn't have happened otherwise? I'd love to hear your thoughts about how challenging experiences can sometimes create unexpected opportunities for growth and transformation. Please share your experiences in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video if the story resonated with you. Subscribe for more stories about overcoming adversity and finding strength through difficult situations, and share this video with anyone who might benefit from hearing about the power of persistence and integrity. Thank you for joining me on this journey, and I hope this story reminds you that even the darkest betrayals can lead to brighter futures when we refuse to let others define our worth or limit our potential.